This story begins also long, long ago, in fact, actually millions of your years ago, in the ancient systems of Orion. There was, in that system, a society under great suppression, great oppression, great negativity, great hardship, great difficulty. In particular, on one of the worlds of the Orion systems that in the ancient language was called Huva. Huva, in that sense, was the central seat of the Orion government, which again was very oppressive. You can see the representation of the idea, the symbol of the vibration, of transformation that over time took place in the Orion systems by looking at the 3-bar banner on the lower left that is represented at the bottom by a black bar, in the middle by a red bar, and at the top by a white bar, showing that the transformation from negative to positive has occurred in the Orion systems, but it occurred through the middle bar of red, through the experiences of life, through the pain and difficulty and suffering of the beings in that time, through the blood of the people. Now, this story of the Orion systems took a long time to work itself through. There were resistances, what you would call underground movements, in the Orion systems, fighting against the suppression, fighting against the oppression, fighting against the negativity. The translation of those resistance fighters in your language would be the Black League. The Black League took their name as the idea of being invisible, being in the dark, being hidden, being surreptitious, so they could fight the fight they believed they had to fight against the oppressive governments of the ancient Orion systems. However, one of the very great lessons they learned in that time was the idea that if you fight fire with fire, you just get more fire. And the idea of using the same violent tactics against the government that the government was using against them did not really work out very well for that resistance movement, and it created an increase in the suppression and an increase in the negativity, and thus they learned that there must be another way. And in learning that there must be another way, they began to approach the idea of the negativity with positive energy, positive vibrations, and over time slowly transformed the Orion systems from darkness into light, from negative into positive, through their sacrifice, through their pain, through their blood. But the idea is that many of the ancient Orions also made a connection to the idea of wanting to work this out on many different levels interdimensionally, and so created for themselves incarnational connections to other star systems that had the vibrational energy that would allow them to go through a process of transmuting this negative energy into positive energy. One of those systems was your solar system. Now, this again was millions of years ago. But some of the first incarnations of ancient Orion energy occurred on a planet that is now what you call your asteroid belt. It no longer exists as a planet. And it was known by many names, but we will choose the idea of Maldek to represent it. Many incarnations were played out there. Much of the ancient Orion negativity was played out there, and eventually the vibration of that negativity was too much to handle and created circumstances and situations that ultimately destroyed the planet through collisions with other planetary bodies in the system when it was young. The incarnations then moved to the next habitable planet, which you now call Mars. At the time it was inhabited. Again, the ancient Orion systems worked themselves out to some degree, but there was still a lot of negativity to be worked out, as this process took eons and eons to go through. When Mars also attracted to itself the idea of a negative experience of destruction through the bombardment of asteroids that ripped away its atmosphere and turned it into the relatively desolate planet that you now understand Mars to be, then the incarnation shifted about 6,000 of your years ago to the Earth plane. Now, this does not mean that the destruction that took place on Mars happened 6,000 years ago. there was a lot of interim time in which, in other dimensions, the Orion energy was playing itself out and going through different processes until it was ready to come into the Earth vibration. The idea of the introduction of the ancient Orion energies and that process of going from the negative to the positive began to play itself out upon its arrival in the area on your planet you call the Middle East. And in this way, it introduced a lot of that ancient negative energy that has still to play itself out on your planet, although it is transforming in this day and age. But as you can see by the banner of the Orion ancient systems, of the red and the black and the white, you will see this throughout your history in oppressive societies, especially what you would call the Nazis. In that was their colors as well. So you will recognize that this ancient negative Orion energy is playing itself out in a variety of ways through many of the things that are going on now on your planet with respect to terrorism, with respect to warfare, with respect to all these kinds of energies that are now getting themselves out on the table, out in front of all your faces, so you can finally decide if you are truly done with this process and transmute all this negativity in a positive way into light, without the idea of having to go through the suffering, the strife, the struggle, and the pain, and the shedding of the blood that is represented by the red band in this system.